She's young, beautiful, incredibly talented and hugely successful. So what more could she possibly want? Well, that's the $64,000 question. Let's see if she tells us as you meet one of India's youngest and best-known fashion designers, Ritu Beri. Ritu, you're barely in your 30s and yet you're at the top of your profession. Is that good luck, hard work, or beyond explanation?
That's terrible, Karan, because I, for one, don't think I'm on top of it all, because I'm actually really scared to be there, because the only way then is down. So I hope that as I rate myself, I think I'm starting off and I'm on my second step, and there's obviously loads for me to do and loads for me to experience. And
Okay, well, let's try and work out how you got to the top. Even though you deny you're at the top, most of your peers and your critics do concede that much. You were born into a family where your father was an army officer and you traveled with him all over. What sort of childhood was it?
that was the most beautiful part of my life, I think. My childhood was very secure, for one. I had parents that were, and still are, completely in love with each other. So I grew up amongst a very healthy and a very happy environment. And the fun thing was that we led a very aristocratic life, because in the army my father always had some amazing postings. He was the adjutant in Dehradun. And my memory of
Was that at the Indian Military Academy?
That's right, at the IMA. And he was, all I remember was early morning, the buggy used to come to take baby for a ride, and polo matches, and it was really ceremonious and absolutely stunning.
So in these aristocratic surroundings, as you described them, was the young baby also a spoilt girl?
Completely. I always, whenever my friends or whoever knows me really well says, "You're such a spoiled brat," I will always credit it to my parents, because they did actually, in a strange sort of way, spoil me.
Your parents say that you were a willful and determined child who was never beyond playing horrible pranks on her little brother.
Actually, that's quite true. I used to be, and still am, I used to have this very possessive streak in me. I wanted my parents to myself. And it was almost after a year we had this little baby, and when I was 2 or 3 years old, and I came to realize that my parents' love was shared with my little brother, I started to psych him and tell him these strange stories that actually, Naveen, you're not Mama Papa's real child. And we had gone out for a drive one day, and we saw this little baby crying in the bus stop, and we actually picked you up and got you home. So he used to be very shattered. I think he was shattered. And one evening when he couldn't take it anymore, he went to Mom and he said, "Mommy, she says that I'm not your child. Is that true?" So it broke Mama's heart, and that's when she sat with me and said, "This is not, this is not nice at all."
The amazing thing is, underneath that beautiful exterior is in fact quite a cold, cruel personality.
Is this wicked woman. No.
Your parents, of course, had a very clever, almost unique way of disciplining you. Do you remember it?
Yes. I remember when, if me and my brother, we'd go out and we'd do something that was not quite right, my mother would just take out her eyes, and she has really big eyes. So she'd just do this to us, and we knew we were doing something wrong. So we had these 2 chairs in Mummy's room, 2 little stools, and I knew which was mine, and my brother would take his chair, and we'd sit down and think about what we'd done wrong, and then go to Mummy, and we had this kiss promise that we'd never do it again. So we'd kiss her on her cheek and say, "Kiss promise, we'd never do it again." So
as a child, you were incredibly fond of chocolates, and in particular chocobars, as the ice creams were called.
There's a correction here. Not as a child, even now.
Even now?
Even now. And my mother took me to, we'd go shopping, and the first thing that used to tempt me was, "Are you going to buy me my chocobar?" So we went out shopping, and I think my mother was a bit infuriated, and all I was asking for was this chocobar. So she told my maid that baby could feed her as many chocobars as she wants today, because she wanted me to get fed up or whatever. And I had 7, and I was asking for the 8th, and that's when my mother said, "Stop."
So
This is terrible.
what Ritu wants, Ritu likes, and Ritu will have.
Absolutely.
Your
That's
parents
true.
say that you were perhaps unlike other children in one unique way. You wanted to go to boarding school, you bullied them, and you almost succeeded.
Actually, my brother went to Doon school, and we used to go and meet him once a month or once in 2 months. And I used to love the whole atmosphere. I used to want my parents to miss me and to actually realize my worth in some strange way when I was a kid. And I used to dream of going to school and having tuck coming over and then coming back on holidays. And so when my brother went to Doon, I forced myself an entrance into Wellams. I was in Wellams, I had my uniforms made, you know, they have these typical salwar kameezes. It was all stitched, and the day my parents were to leave me there, I would like to believe I'm my father's pet. So he said, there's no way that I can leave her and, you know, come away. So I
But you
was
said
back
something
home.
amazing there a moment ago. You said, I wanted my parents to miss me.
Actually, I like to feel important most of the time, at least with my family and close friends. So I think I'm quite a spoiled brat. And
So it's a wonderful picture you're building up. Cruel to your brother, determined to have chocolates no matter whether you've had 7 or 8. You want your parents to miss you, and you always get your way.
yes, I think that's a clear picture of me.
Okay. At that stage, when you were 9, 10, 12, I gather being a fashion designer, however, wasn't any great ambition. You stumbled into it almost by accident after you finished college.
That's true, because when I was right out of school, there was no such thing as designing. Nobody had heard of fashion designers. And, and the only form of art that I wanted to follow, since I used to paint, was commercial art. I wanted to actually do advertisements and, you know, design graphic stuff. There was no real school here other than the Polytechnic or the JJ School of Art, which was again in Bombay, and my parents would never send me away from home. So I think it was completely by accident, because I went into LSR and then I heard of NIFT, and the
The National
challenge,
Institute of Fashion Technology.
exactly, which was supposed to be affiliated to FIT New York. And the interesting thing that actually got me was the fact that they were only going to have 25 students from the whole country for the first batch.
So it became a challenge to
It
get
was a
in.
huge challenge. I didn't know what I was going for. I didn't know what I'd be asked to do once I was in the course. And I wasn't even sure whether I wanted to do the course. All I wanted to do was pass that exam. So I went.
So this is another example of Ritu's willfulness leading her almost up the garden path.
Right. I think I'm digging my own grave, but that's exactly how it went.
But
Yeah.
in fact, I gather the real inspiration came not from NIFT, although you trained and qualified. It came from your association with the French designer and embroidery genius François Lesage.
That's true. When I was in design school, I used to go to the library, and all I was looking for, because I used to enjoy embroideries and I was inspired by embroideries, all I looked for was books on François Lesage. And there weren't many books, but you know, they used to have these design magazines, and there'd be a mention of François Lesage, embroidery by François Lesage. So I went to London and I looked for books in libraries, but there was very little that I really found. And this was this strange, but I think it was destined. I went to Paris, I think this was 93 or 92, and I was sitting with a very, very important person from Cartier in Paris, and she said, is there anybody in the fashion business that you'd like to meet? And the only name that completely lit up was François Lesage, and she laughed at me and she said, you're asking for the moon, because it's impossible to meet him, he meets nobody. But she said, I'll give you his phone number, and if you get somewhere, it's completely your luck. All I did for the next 4 days in Paris was go to a booth, make a call to François, go have a coffee, go back to the booth. I did this about, I think I must have made about 30 calls to him. And I didn't speak French, and the secretary would pick up and she would just speak in French. I had no way to get to him. Finally, I tried really hard, and I said to you, do you know somebody who speaks English in the office? And I did manage to get somebody, and I said, you know, you have to make me speak to Lesage, because I'm from India and I need to talk to him. So he said, okay, call tomorrow morning, maybe. And the next day was when I was leaving back to India. So I called up and he said, yes, what can I do for you? So I was completely dumbfounded, because here was the man that I was dreaming of talking to. So I said, you know, I'm dying to meet you. So he still makes fun of this, and he says, don't die, what do you want to do? Come over. So I went, he says, okay, I'll give you 15 minutes. And I was there for 45 minutes taking pictures of his whole studio and meeting all his staff and his embroiderers.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
Well,
the Ritu Beri I now see in front of me is very much a product of that one inspired meeting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's talk a little about how you've developed since then. You've had some amazing commissions. I gather one of them was from the Saudi royal family.
I was in Dubai doing a fashion show, and the day of my show, the day after my show, I get this call in the hotel, and this lady says that I'm calling from King Fahd, who's the king of Saudi Arabia, and we've seen your clothes in a magazine, and the princess wants to buy your clothes. So I thought it's one of my friends who's trying to act funny with me, and I kept her holding for about 10 days. She just kept calling, and then she called me in India. And finally, it's always my mother who just whacks me on my head and says, wake up. And she said, you might as well respond and see what it's all about. And I said, okay, what exactly are you looking for? So she faxed me the pictures that she'd seen of my collection in some Emirates magazine. And I was in Riyadh doing a collection for the princess's wedding.
So in the palace in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, are princesses wearing Ritu Beri's clothes?
Absolutely, yeah.
Of course, the greatest moment was the collections you've done recently in Paris, both last year and this year. Were those very special for you?
They were the best I've ever done, really, because when I started designing and people would ask me, what's your dream? It used to be to do a show in Paris during the Couture Week, when all the other designers are actually presenting their collections from Europe. And when I actually did it, I was completely numb.
But you did half of it in Hindi, didn't you? And you had Vande Mataram being
In
played for the
fact,
French cocktails.
the first show that I did in Paris, which was in July last year, was completely in Hindi. Even the commentary was in Hindi, because I'm very proud of being Indian, and I believe that wherever I am, I'd like to project India, and I'd like to project Hindi and our national...
But how did the poor Parisians take to Hindi?
Because it was actually a story of a princess who fell in love with a gypsy. So it could not have been in French or in English. It had to be in Hindi. And I had this little write-up in French, which actually told the story. And the commentary was in a very heavy voice. It was almost like Raza Hussain, you know. It was
Deep and resonant.
very beautiful voice. So, and there was this Rajasthani music at the background. So it was very pleasing to listen to, even if you didn't understand it.
And then the one this year, that was done apparently in the grand splendor of the Indian ambassador's residence.
Exactly, yes. That was the second show, because I used to always worry. I used to say after my first show in Paris, I hope this was not a fluke. You know, it's
so the second, in a sense, was a challenge you set yourself to prove.
Absolutely. I said I have to prove to myself that I can do it yet again.
And did you?
Because
did you succeed? Did you prove to yourself?
Oh yes, I was very happy with the...
What was it that pleased you the most? The attention in the papers, the applause of the
No.
Parisians, or was it the fact that you'd gone there a second time and made a mark?
I think it was the fact that I went there again and I was able to pull a show through, because I must admit, for an Indian to go to Paris and actually do a full show, it's not really easy. It's extremely expensive, and it's difficult because you to have the right people coming to the show is also quite a challenge. Besides that, I can't say that I wasn't happy with the press report that I got in Paris, because International Herald Tribune writing about you and actually accepting...
Quite right, you had the famous Susie Menkes
at
praising
the
you
show.
quite highly, didn't
Yes.
she?
So that did make me very happy, because that was an acknowledgement of somebody who's very difficult to please.
And so you still say to me as you began this thing that you're not at the top of your profession?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not
So
yet.
there are still more peaks to climb.
Oh yes, oh yes.
But okay, one of them that you set yourself is not quite fashion, but it's in the world of Bollywood. I gather you're going to be designing almost 100 costumes for Madhuri Dixit.
Yes,
It sounds as if you're redoing her entire wardrobe.
Not really. I'm doing a film with Madhuri, and I'm doing her entire collection for the film. So right from when she's a young girl to when she gets married, so it's a different look that I give her through the movie.
Is it different when you're designing for an actress in a movie to doing fashion and haute couture?
It's different, but it's also a lot of fun, because you're working with real-life situations. I mean, you're looking at her being in a hot, steamy room, and the outfit has to look good, she has to look good. You know, you're catering to scenes, you're catering to a demand that the film has on you, which is quite different from when you create a collection, keeping yourself in mind. In the sense, you're doing something that you want to do.
So here you're stepping out of your own environment into someone else's and adapting your talents to that.
Exactly.
Okay, let's take a quick break there, Ritu. I want to come back in part 2 and talk a little bit more about you and what it's like being one of India's youngest and most successful fashion designers. We'll be back in just a couple of moments. Stay with us. Welcome back. My guest is Ritu Beri. Ritu, you've had a lot of acclaim, but you've also occasionally had to face up to a certain amount of personal criticism. Does it worry you when people attack you and sometimes do it quite personally?
Well, sometimes it upsets me, and sometimes I feel good because I remember a very dear friend of mine. When I was younger, it used to upset me a lot because I've always had this personality that seems to rattle people. Um, Most people either really like me or they are not sure of what I'm all
To
about.
what extent is it because you're young and you've been successful at an age when perhaps they themselves were still struggling? Do you think it's envy?
No, I don't. I don't know. It could be envy. They all say it's envy, but I would like to believe it's something to do with me as well. In the sense, I'm not exactly a very open person. I find it very difficult to make friends. I don't exactly extend myself to an extent that maybe people expect me to. That's only because I'm extremely shy, and I like to be in an environment where I'm with my close friends or my family, and I'm quite an introvert. So in a lot of ways, I feel that I'm misunderstood, and people, this reserved self comes across as being slightly uppity and snobbish. So I guess that rubs people the wrong way, and people say what they feel. And your question whether it upsets me because I feel that the person hardly knows me, and you know, and they're forming impressions of me without knowing me, and most of the impressions are what they'd like to believe of me.
Let me put you one of the comments that one often reads in here, that Ritu is very good at PR, that she plays to the press gallery.
Yeah, I don't know how that really falls through. Maybe I do, and I don't realize I'm a natural. But the point is, I don't know. I have never really worked at it, and I don't know. I don't know what to say because I must be good at it.
You can see that.
I don't know.
But the funny thing is, as you say, you're a shy person, and you say that you don't like going out to social parties, you prefer quiet evenings at home. And yet the press has this image of you as someone who's always present everywhere, involved in all the activities. Is that because you deliberately present yourself that way, almost to hide the shyness? Or is that another example of the world just misunderstanding you?
I don't know if the world misunderstands me. It's actually, you know, I consider myself as two entities. There's the Ritu Beri, who's the designer, who has to have a particular look and who has to be whatever, and the personal side, which is quite different to my public image, and I don't see why people and the world in general needs to know my personal side. So I always have this, I guess, this very closed, very
Is it difficult living two lives? Because that's in a sense what you're suggesting.
no,
you
you know,
have to
it isn't difficult because I'm my base is very strong. My family is there to actually keep me very balanced. Maybe if I could quite easily have been swayed and not found my true being. But at this point of time, I feel very comfortable with the situation. In fact, if I read or I hear or I see people talk about me, I actually have a laugh with my mom and say, poor things, they don't even know.
You say you're a very shy and a very reserved person. Is religion important to you?
Absolutely. In fact, that is the basis of me. I'm a very religious person. And that's also because of my family background again. My mother is very religious, my I mean, my whole family's there's been a huge influence.
And when you say religion is important, is it something that you carry inside your heart, or do you also believe in certain observances?
No, I'm not ritualistic in my beliefs, but I have this strong communication that goes on a constant basis with God. And
You mean you talk to him?
yeah, always, yes. It's always like, if I'm in a situation, like if you're going to ask me your next question, I'm almost going to turn to him and say, what do you want me to say,
So you treat him almost like a friend and a companion?
Oh, yeah.
It's not a forbidding exterior figure for you?
No. The only ritual that I perform is I have a little shrine in my room, and I believe in, lighting a lamp. And
It's
that's
very interesting
exactly
because
what I
the
do.
image that you're giving me of the real Ritu Beri is of, in many ways, a quiet, if I may use the word homely, and in many ways a conventional person.
Oh, yes. I'm actually quite a surprise to most of my friends. I mean, all my friends who are my dear friends, when they first met me, they tell me that when they were going to be introduced to Ritu Beri, they used to say, we don't want to meet her, we don't
Because
want to.
they'd been trapped by the
Because
forbidding
they had
exterior
this
you present.
impression of me as being a very, very with it, very, strong person. And it's only when they got to know me, shocking. I mean, what are you doing saying prayers? Or, for me, it's the most beautiful experiences go to a quiet temple and spend 10 minutes in the day. It's just, it balances your life and you get rid of all these external factors that are so superficial and mundane.
Okay, then let me put a question to the real Ritu Beri rather than to Ritu Beri, the fashion designer. And I have to say this, you're young, you're beautiful, and yet you're single. Why aren't you married?
I don't know. I think I'm just looking for the right thing.
The right thing.
The right moment, the right...
You don't think of a man as a thing,
no,
do
no,
you?
no, not... No, I meant the right thing to happen. The right... I don't know. It's just...
What to you would be the right man?
There's no picture of a right man because I believe that we're all with our own shortcomings and our... I don't look at a right man, but I look at a right feeling, the right chemistry, the right... I don't know, it's
Are
just
you
got to
romantic?
feel right. Absolutely, yes.
So the right man comes almost shrouded in
No.
veils of
No,
romance.
no, no, no. No, in fact, I would be very skeptical if it was so picture perfect. But I think it's the moment, which is what I meant by the right thing. It's the right... I don't know, it just happens and you can't explain it.
You say it's the moment and you can't explain it. Has there ever been anyone, or are you just very picky?
I think I'm difficult.
Difficult.
Very difficult.
Do you think, in fact, the problem is that you're too successful, too much of a celebrity, and therefore it's not going to be easy to find a husband?
Maybe, but I don't consider myself a celebrity and I don't consider myself successful. So, it was really funny. Last New Year's, everybody wanted to know who I was with. And I was actually spending the evening with my family, my parents, my grandmothers, because I thought this was a great moment. And that's when we were talking, we were laughing, and it was so hilarious because I was doing the jig with my dad. And suddenly, when we were sitting and chatting, they said, the problem is that nobody believes that you're actually single. So most potential men don't even try and get close because they say, oh, it's always taken for granted that she definitely has somebody.
And the truth is very much the opposite.
Well, it is.
Well, let's hope we've remedied that in a big way. Let's hope all the bachelors listening today start ringing you up and setting matters straight. Ritu, thank you very much for a wonderful interview and the very best of luck.
Thank you.